crime, stop the dealing, stop the killing. It's time to kick the devil out your mind. Black crime, white crime, stop the dealing, stop the killing. It's time to kick the devil out your mind. Wake up, let's unite. 'Cause our lives matter. Rise up, protect your rights. 'Cause our lives matter. Stand up, let's unite. 'Cause our lives matter. Rise up, protect your rights. 'Cause our lives matter.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Stephen Jones here with Rockin' and Valley, and this is Wake Up, Rise Up, the weekly show. And we're talking to different people who are involved with the Wake Up, Rise Up World Peace Concert. Tonight, our special guest is Bill Haley Jr., and if that name sounds familiar, it's because his father was pretty much one of the originators of rock and roll, okay, with Rock Around the Clock. And I'm proud to say that Bill's like a personal friend in some respects. I got one of his books, which was really cool reading it, and I've been up personally and all kinds of cool stuff. Bill, thank you for joining us tonight. I mean, wow, it's a privilege to have you here on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. My pleasure to be here.
So, Bill, you and I were, like you had mentioned before, we're about the same age. We've seen a lot of changes going on here in the world, and we're seeing some major changes now. What's your basic take, music versus peace, and what's it doing to people as far as bringing them together? How you see music bringing people together and bringing peace together? I mean, you kind of mentioned it with your song and how your dad did.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so you mentioned our age. I'm going to be 68 coming up in a couple of months. So I really came of age. A lot of us are our worldviews are shaped a lot by the culture that was prevalent around the time we were in our very early teens, preteens, and so on and so forth. So I was 13 years old in the summer of 1968, the summer of love. And of course, I was heavily influenced by the music of those times. And actually before that, the Beatles were my first obsession, 1963, 1964, et cetera, et cetera. So, the whole overriding prevalent theme of that year, 1968, and the music of that time was about peace and love. Of course, it was during the Vietnam War, and there were protests here in the U.S. But the music of people like John Lennon, who of course all the Beatles, but John Lennon in particular, made the theme of peace a large part of a lot of the music he wrote. So, I was obviously heavily influenced by that, by the times, and that's never left me and never will. Music, as you indicated, music is something that brings people together and it breaks down barriers. I think, from my point of view, the biggest obstacle to peace is lack of understanding, lack of acceptance, lack of just realizing how we're just one people, regardless of our differences. Together, ultimately, we're one person. We're all the same inside, and music kind of gets right to the core of that, brings us together, and really helps us have those great feelings of love, peace, compassion. So I think music is critically important. And you think, historically, some of the great events, cultural events, Live Aid and some of these other huge festivals, even Woodstock, it was all about bringing peace, love, and understanding to all of us. So to me, music is critically important in the effort to bring world peace. And to promote, as I say, education, understanding. It's so important to learn other points of view, learn about other cultures, but to understand the perspectives of other people different than ourselves. It opens us up. It breaks down our barriers, and it breaks down that human predilection to kind of get defensive and to segregate and to isolate and to feel superior to others. which is all really nonsense when you think of it. But music really goes a long way to help us break down those barriers and to really learn about other cultures, other thoughts, other ideas, and really helps us, I think, achieve that collective feeling of peace that hopefully is where we're all headed and where the world's going. And certainly, music is a large part of that. So
I'm hoping
there you go.
Myself. Yeah, I looking at what we're doing, with Wake Up, Rise Up. We're spreading this 40-hour song across the globe, and it, the cool part about it is this, and I saw this last year when I did it, and this year's going to be different because we got even more. But it's the differences and all the different kinds of music that are coming across it, and if we can come together in music, maybe we can come together in ideology. Mm-hmm. Maybe we won't have somebody flattening a country somewhere or a shooting in a suburb or whatever else it is. And it's like you say, music is the universal language. Mm-hmm. I get a kick out of it. You ever notice? I think you told me once you got grandchildren. I see my grandchildren. If you sit there and you start pounding or you start a beat going, you see a little kid, they start jamming. They can dance at 2 years old. So they know what music is at 2 years old. Okay.
Sure.
And if you play at a nursing home, they're not quite jamming as hard, but they're still there going along with it. So it's all ages and it's all across all lives. I guess the next question I could say, you covered quite a bit in that. Just the next question is, what do you think we could do? Where would you think would be a starting point? Music's changed a lot since Rock Around the Clock. Rock Around the Clock was very basic music. Okay, a guitar, bass, and not a whole lot of effects. Now, it's electronic, and I can't even describe half the stuff they use in it. But
right,
what would you? I don't know. You're given rose-colored glasses and a wand. What would you do to change, or wouldn't you change anything?
Well, I don't know that you really can change anything except make your own personal contributions to it. But music, popular music, let me put it that way, it's an organic thing. It's continually evolving and growing, which is really, what led to rock and roll and Rock Around the Clock. It was a process that, in my view, in American culture, really started in the 1890s in New Orleans, and you had a kind of a unique situation in New Orleans as a city, where you had a cultural class called the Creole class of Black individuals who were highly educated. They played classical music, used classical music instruments, and you also had, being in the Deep South, some of the residue of slavery and Congo Square, where on Sundays the African rhythms would be would go throughout the day, bringing people together. So New Orleans was kind of a place where you had the European classical influences from the Creoles and their horns, and rhythms from the Congo Square coming together, and predominant white culture all coming together and creating a musical form that evolved eventually into rock and roll. First blues, jazz. It traveled up the Mississippi River to the cities of Chicago, to St. Louis, to Kansas City, and then east to New York, and so on and so forth. So it's an ongoing evolutionary process, and in you had the jazz age in the 20s, and then you had the big bands in the 30s and 40s, and that became the rhythm and blues combos. And of course, simultaneous to that, you had hillbilly and Western music was evolving as well, which was also influenced somewhat by African American music. So it's all a process, and of course, in the early 1950s on my father's part, and in the mid 50s with many other artists that also rose to prominence shortly after my father. I'm talking like Chuck Berry and Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis and so on and so forth. They all, grabbed or stepped into the process as it was occurring then in the early 50s of the coming together in a large way of these two musical forms Once again, all about in spite of what was a very hostile environment in terms of race in America. And in my view, rock and roll was really essential, I think, for what would become the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And so the process continues on and on and on. But once as I say, music is an organic thing. So I think what started in New Orleans in the 1890s has kind of grown and permutated and reinvented itself over and over and over again. And at this point in 2022, it might have exhausted itself, perhaps. But we're seeing, of course, the influences more of still coming from other cultures, and music is still changing and evolving, and it will continue to do so. So whatever form it takes, whether we all like it or we don't like it, it's an organic process that's constantly changing, and people will always look to the past for ideas. But of course, they'll also be creative and try to bring their own perspective into things and to add new twists and turns to it. So, so where we're going from here, I don't know, but I do know that it will continue because, as you indicated, music is an essential part of human culture. I mean, for little children, I mean, back when, before they had fire, they were probably, making melodies together, whether in terms of their spiritual beliefs or as a form of communication, as a form of socialization. Music is an essential part of almost every human activity. We take it for granted, but imagine if it wasn't here, everything would be totally different. So, I see it continuing along the path it has and continuing to be an essential part of the process of human beings evolving spiritually, emotionally, socially. And so it's a tremendous force for good and positive. And I see it continuing in spite of the setbacks and the other things that are going on in the world. There's territorial differences and money and power and all these things that really work against the idea of peace. But beyond all that, I mean, I always love the story of during World War II in the trenches. Around the holidays, the Allied forces and the Germans took a break and sang songs across the trenches together, even in a time of war, World War. So, music is an incredibly powerful force for good and for promoting peace in the world. And I don't see that changing in spite of all the challenges that we do face.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. The thing that strikes me always funny about, and I watch the charts and and that's what I do. The thing with Rock Around the Clock, I always found funny, was the number one song that followed Rock Around Clock. Okay, here you got this rhythm and blues jazzy song, and after it, you got the Yellow Rose of Texas.
Yeah.
But it shows you the contrast of just how it goes. How the changes of taste go, and then what happens in the 60s. You got the Beatles dominating the charts, and Satchmo knocks them all down.
Yeah,
right. It's very organic, and it does its own thing, and we're going to see. Hopefully, it doesn't get too crazy. Maybe it will. I don't know. But how about you tell us your website and how we can get some of your cool books and records and other stuff that you're doing?
Sure. So I wrote a book about my father, partly because there really, there have been a few books, but it's a great story that's not really well known. My father was very instrumental, but also there's a personal reason in terms of my own relationship, or really lack of relationship, with my father. And part of the process of coming to terms with that was writing this book. So I wrote the book called Crazy Man Crazy, the Bill Haley story. And this is the North American version, published by Backbeat Books, and it's also published in the UK and globally. Same title.
I just had to show this.
Thank you. So that book has been published. It's out there, and so related to that, of course, really most of my life I had avoided association with my father because it's very hard to be seen as an extension of a famous person. But as we age, we get a little wiser and realize, everything is perspective. You can look at something as a detriment, or you can look at it as an opportunity and a positive. So So after many years of avoiding it, I actually put together a band called Bill Haley Jr. and the Comets, where I not only perform my father's music, but I tell the story of the beginning days of rock and roll and my father's role in it. And we've been playing all over the U.S. Occasionally outside the U.S. We did a nice tour of New Zealand in 2014, and I've appeared in UK and in Germany, and so mostly around the United States. We continue this show. So Bill Haley Jr., BillHaleyJR.com is the band website. And at the same time, I'm working on several other projects related to my father to hopefully continue to tell a story. I've worked on a stage show, which may or may not be produced. We'll see, but we're working on clearing the rights to the music, which is, the business side of things is always a challenge. And I'm working on a documentary with some other partners about the Bill Haley story as well. So if you go to BillHaleyJr.com, you can learn a little bit more about where to get the book. It's very easily available on Amazon. Most major bookstores, Barnes and Noble, will carry it on the shelves. So it's pretty easy to get a hold of the book. It's a fascinating story, and I would encourage people who are interested not only in Bill Haley but in the beginning of rock and roll and how it came together. And then even delving a little deeper into issues like stardom, becoming famous, and what that does to your personal life. And there are other themes, including the theme we started talking about, which is the role of this music in terms of forwarding the aims and of social integration. And civil rights and so on and so forth. So it's an interesting book about an interesting time. So I would encourage people to get that. And by all means, if you see we're in your town or near your town, come on out and see the show, because I have a great band. We perform the music pretty authentically, and we tell a lot of stories. And I also, depending on the venue, if it's available, I run a PowerPoint presentation of about 250, 300 vintage photographs of my father and the band in those days. And so we kind of make it a very interesting experience. And, going back to your original point about how music makes people happy. I mean, the most rewarding thing about doing all this is not the personal, you would expect, oh, well, you make a few bucks and you get to travel. Well, that's all great. But the real joy in this is seeing the effect that this music in particular, which was all about being happy and dancing, the effect it has on people. And invariably, after each of the shows, we get to meet the people, the audience, and I hear so many stories of how this music, was such an important part of their youth, and how it made them happy, it made them want to dance, and so it's just a wonderful experience. And just staying with the theme of world peace, I mean, this is what we need more of in the world. Just feeling good together, experiencing music and entertainment and joy together, rather than focusing on those things that divide us. This is something that unites us. And so it's very gratifying and to go out and perform this music, tell my father's story, share his story, and at the same time, really promote all the good things in the world that start with music.
Yep. You and I met after one of your shows.
Mm-hmm.
There was over here at Allentown,
Allentown Fairgrounds.
Allentown Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And somewhere I have the picture of you and I standing there, and but I remember looking up there, Bill Haley Jr., and then when you went in to Rock Around the Clock, I mean, my voice is like my father's. Okay, I can hear my dad's voice in my voice, and I heard your dad's voice in you. Okay, and wow, and it's like. And I'm a 50s guy. I love the 50s music, and it's like, you got me. So at any rate, Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. It's a lot of fun. I'll make sure that your website's posted here and everyone can see it. And definitely, get the book, man. Like I said, here it is. Where is it? Okay, there it is. Crazy Man Crazy. I got my own copy. You can't have it. So So, great book. I love the picture of your dad and Elvis. I think it's great. So anyway, this is Steve Jones here with Wake Up, Rise Up, the weekly show, along with Bill Haley Jr. And wishing you a peaceful evening, and we'll see you next week. So Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. Peace to everybody.
Good night now.
Kelly Courts. I'm the founder of Peace Amongst Youth, which is a nonprofit organization based out of Atlantic City, New Jersey. The purpose of my organization is to bring awareness to how our community is impacted by violent crimes and the negative impact it has on us as a whole, going untreated. I'm personally in dismissed youth, and I lost my 13-year-old son gun violence in 2012. Until today, I'm fighting the justice system for my son who's now.
Please listen to this message for you. It's from the groups of Phase 5 Record Show. When someone said we need to spread the news, we decided to share it through a song. Black crime, white crime, stop the dealing, stop the killing. It's time to kick that devil out your mind. Black crime, white crime, stop the dealing, stop the killing. It's time to kick that devil out your mind. Let's unite, 'cause our lives matter. Rise up, protect your rights, 'cause our lives matter. Stand up, let's unite, 'cause our lives matter. Rise up, protect your rights, 'cause our lives matter.
It doesn't matter if you're black or white. Love your brother, love your sister, please treat them right. Don't wait until they're almost dead to feed the poor, even with a loaf of bread. Yeah.
Let's unite,
Yeah.
'cause our lives matter. Rise up, protect your rights, 'cause our lives matter. Stand up, let's unite, 'cause our lives matter. Rise up, protect your rights, 'cause our lives matter. Wave your hands in the air, wave your hands in the earth. Show the world that we care. Wave your hands in the air, wave your hands in the earth. Wave your hands, you care.
Breaking news is the same old mess. Someone got shot, can't snitch, no arrest. Here's the basic information before leaving Earth. Open up that book, it's all in the Word.
Second Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sins, and will heal their land.
Human traffic, kidnapping, this is too wild. Another missing child. Why complain about the politicians you call a joke? In the end, you won't even go and vote.
Wake up, let's unite, 'cause our lives matter. Rise up, protect your rights, 'cause our lives matter. Stand up, let's unite, 'cause our lives matter.
Children, I've come back today to tell the story of the long, hard way that I had to climb, that I had to know, in order that my race might live and grow. Look at my face, dark as the night, yet shining like the sun that loves true light. I am the child they stole from the sand 300 years ago in Africa's land.